Hey guys, it's your girl Caitlin and welcome to another ASMR video. And today we are going to be reading Saffron the Yellow Fairy. She's the third Rainbow Fairy in this Rainbow Fairy series. And in the last video we finished reading Amber the Orange Fairy. I hope you enjoyed the Amber the Orange Fairy story as much as I did. It was an interesting and fun story to read. So without further ado, get in bed, get comfortable, and enjoy the story. Chapter 1 of Very Fierce Bee. Over here, Kirsty called Rachel Walker. Kirsty ran down one of the emerald green fields that covered this part of Rainspell Island. Buttercups and daisies dotted the grass. "Don't go too far," Kirsty's mom called. She and Kirsty's dad were climbing over a stile at the top of the field. Kirsty caught up with her friend. "What have you found, Rachel? Is it another rainbow fairy?" she asked hopefully. "I don't know." Rachel was standing at the bank of a rippling stream. "I thought I heard something." Kirsty's face lit up. "Maybe there's a fairy in the stream," Rachel nodded. She knelt down on the soft grass and put her ear close to the water. Kirsty crouched down too and listened really hard. The sun glittered on the water as it splashed over big, shiny pebbles. Tiny rainbows flashed and sparkled. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And then they heard a tiny, bubbling voice. "Follow me," it gurgled. "Follow me." "Oh!" Rachel gasped. "Did you hear that?" "Yes," said Kirsty, her eyes wide. "It must be a magic stream." Rachel felt her heart beat fast. "Maybe the stream will lead us to the Yellow Fairy," she said. Rachel and Kirsty had a special secret. They had promised the king and queen of Fairyland they would find the lost rainbow fairies Jack Frost's spell had hidden rainbow fairies on Rainspell Island. Fairyland would be cold and gray until all the 7 fairies had been found and returned to their home. Silverfish darted in and out of the bright green weed at the bottom of the stream. "Follow us, follow us," they whispered in tinkling voices. Rachel and Kirsty smiled at each other. Titania, the fairy queen, had said that the magic would find them. Kirsty's parents had stopped to admire the stream too. "Which way now?" asked Mr. Tate. "You two seemed to know where you're going." "Let's go this way," Kirsty said, pointing along the bank. A brilliant blue kingfisher flew up from its perch on the twig. Butterflies as bright as jewels fluttered amongst the reeds. "Everything on Rainspell Island is so beautiful," said Kirsty's mom. "I'm glad we still have 5 days of holiday left." Yes, Rachel thought, and 5 rainbow fairies still to find. Saffron, Fern, Sky, Izzy, and Heather. Ruby the Red Fairy and Amber the Orange Fairy were already safe in the pot at the end of the rainbow. The girls ran on ahead of Mr. and Mrs. Tate as they followed the bubbling stream. The sun went to behind a big, dark cloud. A chilly breeze ruffled Kirsty's hair. She saw that some of the leaves on the trees were turning brown even though it wasn't autumn. "It looks like Jack Frost's goblins are still around," she warned Rachel. "I know." Rachel gave a shiver. "Horrible things, they'll do anything to stop the rainbow fairies getting back to Fairyland." The 2 friends stared anxiously up at the sky, but then the sun came out again. They smiled at relief. The stream ran through a meadow covered with green clover. A herd of black and white cows were grazing at the water's edge. They looked up with their huge brown eyes. "Aren't they lovely?" Kirsty said. Suddenly the cows tossed their heads and ran off towards the other end of the field. Rachel and Kirsty looked at each other in surprise. What was going on? There was a loud buzzing noise. A small, angry shape came whizzing through the air, straight towards them. Rachel almost jumped out of her skin. "It's a bee!" she gasped. "Run!" Kirsty cried. The cows had got to the right idea. Rachel tore through the meadow with Kirsty beside her, their feet pounding the grass. "Keep running, girls," called Mr. Tate, catching up with them. "That bee seems to be following us." Rachel glanced back. The bee was huge, bigger than any bee she'd ever seen. "In here, quick!" Mrs. Tate called from the other side of the field. She pulled open a wooden gate. They all ran through it, then stopped to catch their breath. "I wonder who lives here," Kirsty panted. They were in a beautiful garden. A path led up to the thatched cottage, with yellow roses around the door. Just then, a very strange creature came out from behind a tree. It looked like an alien from outer space. "Oh!" Rachel and Kirsty gasped. The creature lifted its gloved hands and removed a white leather helmet to reveal an old lady. She smiled at them. "Sorry if I startled you," she said. "I do look a bit strange in my beekeeper suit." Rachel sighed in relief. It wasn't a space alien after all. "I'm Miss Mary," the old lady went on. "Hello," Rachel said. "I'm Rachel, and this is my friend Kirsty." "And this is my mom and dad," Kirsty added. Mr. and Mrs. Tate greeted Miss Mary. Then Mr. Tate ducked as the huge bee zoomed past his ear. "Watch out," he said. "Oh, it's that hiveless queen again," said Mrs. Mary. She flapped her hand at the bee. "Go on, shoo." Rachel watched it swoop over a low hedge and disappear. "Why did the bee chase us?" Kirsty asked. "I don't think she was chasing you, my dear," said Mrs. Mary. "She was just heading this way because she's looking for a hive of her own. But all of mine already have queens." "Well, thank goodness that she's gone now," said Mrs. Tate. "Since you're here, would you like to try some of my honey?" Mrs. Mary asked, her blue eyes sparkling merrily. "Oh, yes, please," said Rachel. The others nodded, and they followed Mrs. Mary across the lawn to the table covered with rows of jars. Each jar was filled with rich golden honey. Dappled sunlight danced over the jars, making the honey glow. "Here you are," said Mrs. Mary, spooning some of the honey on a pretty yellow plate. "Thank you," Rachel said politely. She dipped her finger into the little pool of honey and popped it into her mouth. The honey was the most delicious she had ever tasted, sweet and smooth. Then she felt it begin to tingle on her tongue. She looked across to Kirsty. "It tastes all fizzy," she whispered. Kirsty dipped her finger into the honey too. "And look," she said. Rachel saw that the honey was sparkling with 1,000 tiny golden lights. She grabbed Kirsty's arm. "Do you think this means—" "Yes," said Kirsty. Her eyes were shining. "Another rainbow fairy must be nearby." Chapter 2, The Magic Hive. "We have to find out where this honey came from," Rachel said excitedly. "Yes," Kirsty agreed. "Mom, can we stay here for a bit longer, please?" As long as it's okay with Mrs. Mary, Kirsty's mom replied. Mrs. Mary beamed. Of course they can stay, she said kindly. Mr. and Mrs. Tate decided to carry on with their walk. Make sure you come back to Dolphin Cottage by lunchtime, Kirsty's mom said. We will, Kirsty promised. Come along then, girls. Mrs. Mary set off across the smooth green lawn. Rachel and Kirsty followed her down the garden to some old and twisted apple trees. 6 wooden hives stood underneath. Kirsty stared at the row of hives. Which one did the honey we tasted come from? She asked. Mrs. Mary looked pleased. Did you enjoy it? The honey from that hive tastes especially good at the moment. Rachel and Kirsty grinned at each other. I think we might know why, Rachel whispered to Kirsty. Yes, Kirsty agreed. It could be fairy honey. That's the one, Mrs. Mary said proudly, pointing to the very bottom of the garden. One hive stood there all alone beneath the biggest apple tree. As they drew nearer to the hive, a sleepy buzzing noise, a sound drifted up into the air. The bees in the hive are very peaceful nowadays, said Mrs. Mary. I've never known them to be happy. Can we get a bit closer? Rachel asked eagerly. She couldn't wait to find out if the hive held a magical secret. Mrs. Mary looked thoughtful. I think it's safe with the bees so quiet, she decided. But you had better wear a hood like mine just in case. She went into the nearby shed and brought out 2 beekeeper hoods. Here you are. Rachel and Kirsty pulled the hoods over their heads. It was a bit dark and stuffy inside, but they could see out of the fine netting. They moved closer to the hive. The soft buzzing sounded almost like music. We need to open it and have a look, Kirsty whispered to Rachel. Rachel nodded. But they couldn't start searching for the yellow fairy with Mrs. Mary there. Ruby had warned them that no grown-ups should see the fairies. Suddenly, Kirsty had an idea. Mrs. Mary, could I have a drink of water, please? She asked. Of course you can, dear, Mrs. Mary said. She went off towards the cottage. The girls waited until Mrs. Mary disappeared inside. Quick! Kirsty spun around. Let's open the hive. Rachel grasped one end of the lid. Kirsty took hold of the other end. They pulled hard and it slowly opened. It came loose with a squeaky sound. Strings of golden honey stretched down from the lid. Watch out, it's very sticky, Rachel said. The girls bent down and laid the heavy wooden top carefully on the ground. Kirsty wiped her fingers on the grass. Look, Rachel whispered as she stood up. Kirsty turned to see and gasped as a shower of sparkling gold dust shot out of the hive. It hung in a soft cloud, shimmering and dancing in the sunlight fairy dust. Rachel leaned over and peered down into the hive. A tiny girl was sitting cross-legged on a piece of honeycomb. In the middle of a golden sea of honey, a bee lay with its head in her lap while she combed its silky hair. Several other bees were waiting their turn, buzzing gently. Oh, Kirsty, Rachel whispered. We found another rainbow fairy. And we're gonna leave it at that, guys. I hope you enjoyed the story so far. If you are, be sure to come back for the next 4 chapters. I hope you enjoyed this story, and I hope you have a wonderful sleep. Good night.